map that has all of the designated areas in a two-dimensional format. There's one that's without topography and one that's with, and I kind of like the one that's with, but I thought I'd ask the committee which one to take for.
Maps.
Well, these two, yeah.
Oh, we don't have to pay for the ink. This is better.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, it looks a little more.
I think the topographic one is great, but I think what would be a great addition if we can overlay, Ellen's, what is possible in each of these now, given the bill that we
That might
have
be
on
a
the floor.
separate piece of paper.
It might be, but it might be that we have days to actually do that, so this
Okay.
is more informative.
I thought you were gonna say municipal water and sewer, which we did.
No, we could do that also, but I think what Ellen is gonna give us is a word of which of these we could do what in. And I think that would be a very helpful picture of a visual of, okay, you see these, and this is what is going to be possible in each one of these.
The other thing you
spaces.
might want to have on here is how much of the rest of this land is conserved. Because I believe a third of the land in the state is conserved.
Yep,
Well,
but that won't, that's.
And you can't
In the
build
pen-
on that. And then there's all the prime ag soil that you can't build on.
we can,
So there's other,
I
we
think
can
we're
see what
focused on
John can do.
that,
I don't think, I think the House just passed a bill asking for a third of the land to be conserved, but
Mhm.
we can see what categories he might be able to overlay. I don't know if there's, yeah.
Only build housing in New Hampshire.
it would be helpful to know the acreage, and then we could also have a calculation of, say, 10 units per acre, which is in between the 5 units and the 25 units, just for a rough estimate of the number of houses, because that's a question.
Well, that
we
would
have.
be building new houses, not
Right,
duplexing or.
right, or the total that could fit on that area.
Yeah.
this-
Okay,
So
we'll keep
just the
working on it.
acreage, and then maybe just the highways, the major highways would be helpful.
Okay. Well, it's a good start. We
Good
appreciate
to
you,
see you.
Scott. Senator Chittenden, the one-line amendment, draft 1.1, it's right on our desk, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much for having me. And I also just want to thank this committee. Housing is the most important issue for this state, and you all have presented an amazing bill and a great bill that I look forward to supporting. This is exactly what we should be focusing our attention on. Bravo. I'm here for a couple of reasons. One, I'm here in front of you as a committee because, and in this body, because I want to see more houses built in Vermont. I want to see more opportunities for people to stay here, become neighbors and Vermonters. And when I talk to people that know how to build houses and know what the obstacles are, the advocates that we all know collectively, they very advocatively, very, very convincingly have really stressed for and pressed for what this committee did have in the original bill and was proposed and contemplated in multiple discussions. Senator Clarkson, I believe this was an idea that you raised in the committee, which is, it's not what came out originally from your committee, and it's not what Senate Natural Resources is proposing, but instead it is in the middle with very, very reasonable and rational argument for why. And I want to tell a short story as to why. Do you all know South Burlington, kind of the University Mall? Okay, so that's Dorset Street. I grew up 3 miles south on Dorset Street, still live there today. I live in the house I grew up in, haven't gone very far in life. All right, so when I grew up there in the 80s, there was no sewer and water. So it was a farm field, it was the Chittenden farm, and there was the Eau Claire farm, and all these other farms. In the 90s, we put sewer and water out that way. So it's an area that's really on the edge of growth, and it's for the better. Those are great neighborhoods. Those are neighborhoods with kids kicking balls, swing sets. And it's right next to Burlington. So it's just south of Burlington. So it's where housing should occur. And I see what's happened since the 90s, which is not bad, but I could show you just south of my house, Sadie Lane, 2 parcels north of my house, Link Road, just across the Shelburne town line, right across the street from me on Willowbrook, there are these clusters of 10 homes. Now, I think it looks great, and I'm glad because people need to live somewhere. It's connected to city sewer. And there are 10 homes for the following reason. That Act 250, which is a great bill, it has done great things for the state of Vermont over the last 50 years. It, like all legislation, can be improved, modernized and updated. But Act 250 has this threshold that you all have been working so closely on that drives and motivates certain behaviors, okay? For better or for worse, when somebody is looking to build some houses on their property because they're now connected to city sewer in a municipality with planning, zoning, and subdivision like South Burlington has, they have a choice. They are presented with, when they go and talk to people that know how to build houses, well, you can build 10 units and it'll be this much paperwork and it'll have this much of a cost. Or if you build anything more than 10 units, you will have this much paperwork and it will cost you a lot more because you'll have to go back to 250 with a great deal of uncertainty. Those houses are still being built and those houses are still abiding by all of the good regulations we have on prime ag soils, on conserved land, on all the requirements that these communities with planning and zoning have. So the 10 houses are coming online in the way the communities want them to come on, but they're only 10 houses. So I could show you a development just down the street from me, across the Shelburne town line. It's a 40-acre, I think it's a 40-acre lot. There are 10 houses with huge acres. And I think you all have been diving into this topic. Wouldn't that be a better land use, a better way to address our housing crisis, which gets at our climate crisis, which gets at our affordability crisis, if instead maybe there was 20 units or 25 units? Now, I'm not saying that they couldn't have gone through Act 250. They certainly could. And I'm not talking about repealing Act 250. What I'm talking about is exactly what you all are doing, which is just modifying that threshold, that behavioral modifier for 3 years. So that for the next 3 years, as we address this crisis, maybe those, because there will be 10-unit subdivisions coming online over the next 3 years in these same communities. What if there were 20 units instead? Wouldn't that address and resolve it, somewhat directly meet the needs of Vermont? If instead of the 10 that's behaviorally modified because of Act 250 for this short period of time, would that better address some of our objectives? So that's why, as much as I understand, your committees have been working so closely with Senate Natural Resources, and I applaud the efforts. This is exactly what Vermonters want us to be focused on, and I understand you've come to an agreement with a middle ground, and I see this map. That's great. I'm not even going to ask that you necessarily weigh in on this amendment. I'm inclined to introduce it on the floor. I would just welcome your advice. Maybe another notion that was a further extrapolation of this that if you have thoughts between now and the floor on Tuesday, I'd love to hear. This proposes what Senator Clarkson had floated sometimes, which is all communities with planning, zoning, and subdivision. Another notion that if you all have thoughts on is your maps with the dots with all the neighborhood downtown development areas, as well as the downtown associations. If the communities that have those, that have some proven planning zoning that can manage a downtown center, maybe the entire community was given this sort of higher threshold for a short period of time. My current proposed amendment is the 25/5 for 3 years, for the next 3 years for all communities with planning and zoning and subdivision. I'm inclined to put that on the floor, and I don't necessarily need you all to weigh in on it now. I just think Vermonters want to know where their representatives stand on what is the most important issue to them. I'll stop talking momentarily because I'm sure you have 1,000 things to do. But this is a survey that did come out just yesterday, the Green Mountain State poll from the University of New Hampshire. And when asked an open-ended question of Vermonters what they care the most about, 32% housing. The next most important thing in an open-ended response, cost of living, taxes, and then other items. My point is housing is what they want us to address. And I love your bill. This amendment is just one additional thing that you all talked about. I wasn't part of either of the committees that have been working on this. I just see it as something that we should definitely consider as a body and as a chamber and possibly pass.
Well, we certainly do feel vindicated with this poll. Flattery and mimicry will get you far in here. So we appreciate all of this. And we know that it's something we considered as well. I feel that for, the integrity of the process and our work with the Natural Resources Committee, I would not be able to support your amendment as much as I appreciate it. We, certainly went as far as we thought we could to meet the extent of the housing crisis. And it's not our policy in the Senate to steamroll over another committee that shares jurisdiction over these issues. So I hear you not sure if you want to vote in here. If you could bring something to the floor that had at least 3 votes in each of these committees, that's something that, could potentially be considered. I just doubt that you'll be able to get that with in either of these committees with this particular amendment, Senator Clark.
Are you scheduled to present this at SNRE?
Correct.
Great,
And
okay,
then-
good.
Right after this, yeah.
Then maybe we should wait and see how they weigh in, given they're the particular committee jurisdiction on this. And then maybe we can
Share
we can
Just
be.
ask a question in terms of, I realize that you had reached an agreement with the chair of the other committee in terms of Conrad, but was any of this part of that agreement? Or was this different from that or outside of those things that we theoretically have agreed upon?
I would, well, so was it discussed? This was probably the hardest piece for natural resources to swallow. As you saw, we moved steps closer on everything else.
I believe they did discuss elements of this because they had listened to our testimony and were looking at that. So I think it'll be interesting to hear what they say after.
I mean, I think this is important.
Mhm.
As we look at this need, which we recognize in our bill, of how critical housing is in the future, it is the first issue in line right now to solving the demographic crisis, all these things. And this at least removes some of the major impediments to getting us forward. And where we have right now with the compromise that we have, it's going to be a failure as far as housing is concerned. It is not going to get us where we need to get. And I think we need to take a strong stand on, and this is, not nearly as far as I would go, as you well know.
We know,
You know,
we know.
but I think this is a very modest proposal that is important to, particularly in the short term, make some progress on housing.
Well, I wish you had all been so enthusiastic when I presented it. However, sadly, we are in a place.
Well, we were in
Where-
a different place.
I know. So we are now in a place where we have what we often fondly refer to as a grand bargain. And I think it's essential for us to hear from SNRE first, because this is part of their area of jurisdiction.
Well, as
And then
I say,
think
though,
we
in
should-
terms of the bargain, I'm not sure that all of us individually sitting on this committee were part of that bargain.
Mhm.
We weren't in the room,
I
we
think
didn't
that's fair.
negotiate it, we didn't discuss it, and we were not part of that bargain, and I don't feel bound by it.
I thought you were gonna point out, Senator Brock, that 7% of the state think the problem is left and leftist politicians. But I hear you.
I didn't get down that far.
Yeah.
I gotta see what the other things they weighed in on.
That's pretty high.
Yes.
But not
I
as high as
imagine.
other.
I imagine if we took a vote, we would not all be unanimous on this amendment. So I appreciate what you're saying. So I don't think we share this jurisdiction. I just want to say that. And we
Yeah,
will
no,
continue to share this jurisdiction.
Correct.
And I think we will continue to work to get here to this place. That's in your amendment. We gave a lot for the Natural Resources Committee to consider this year, and they met us, quite far outside of their comfort zone.
Yep.
So I don't want to wait for them to
Okay.
take a vote. I would just ask our presenter of the amendment if you'd like a vote from us now, or if you wanted to wait and talk to that committee and see if the language changes.
I think waiting makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I think the other map that I'd like to see that relevant to that is the map in which you have highlighted all the areas that have no dots. In other words, the inverse of the dots.
Right.
And that shows you where we can't build anything and how we can't deal with the housing crisis.
Well, you can
in all
build,
of
if you are rich enough, you can buy land
Correct.
and you can build your house.
Yeah.
But the average person starting out cannot do that. And right now, they cannot. They have to wait for me to die, and then they won't be able to afford my house.
And they won't be able to heat it either.
No.
I know you're busy. If I can make a closing comment and then depart. Partly also what was motivating me here was that grand bargain that you had. You had a grand bargain. I just heard from the VLCT that they are very concerned that grand bargain has been
Mhm.
imbalanced. And so partly why I'm here is because the same people that are talking to the VLCT are talking to me and talking to you all. And I just see this as the right conversation to have. And again, I applaud your efforts. I look forward to supporting your bill. Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank
Thank you.
Cheers. Good luck.
You know, McCormick at McDonald's. She's the main Latin American land barons who don't really care. Everybody else lives in the barrio.
The only one that was voted on is
Barbie's a land.
She's got family land.
Hello.
What we did
Oh, okay.
together.
Okay.
Oh.
How are you? I think we should start, well, why don't we get a witness chair? I think we'll start, so committee with our 40 minutes with Tucker and the commissioner. I'd like us to get a brief update from Tucker on what evolved yesterday with sports betting, or from
That was a good vote.
conceptual to what passed on the floor. And
House voted.
and then to preview, we have one, I think miscellaneous alcohol bill in here from the House, but we also have a couple other alcohol bills that we have introduced by senators. So to preview those a little bit and then let the commissioner weigh in.
Good morning, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Council. Amazed at how well rested you all look compared to me. Didn't recognize myself in the mirror this morning. And Senator Clarkson came to visit me on the House floor last night around 10 o'clock. So again, you're all
Well, I
way
was
better
previewing.
marathoners than I
We
am.
were previewing what we were getting.
Was so sports wagering passed
yeah.
at 10 p.m.
It passed on a voice vote.
Oh, I didn't think it was the one that.
It came right after paid family leave, 3.5
Oh,
hour
great.
break.
Okay, you can stay till 10:15. Thank you, Scott. Okay, I didn't know what our timing was
Just
today.
less than an hour.
Or somebody can. Sounds like the commissioner can.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry that you're tired.
Or we, and
So-
we have our wonderful clerk. Who- Is this the first time you're on committee?
No.
No, you've come in here before. Right.
Can you remind me your name?
I'm Ashley.
Ash.
Well, we'll make sure you testify this time, so you can practice. So what was the vote yesterday?
It was a voice vote
It was a
on
voice vote.
all of the amendments and on second reading.
It went
It's a
after.
little anticlimactic for you, I imagine.
The structure that we covered yesterday is still contained in H 127.
Great.
It was not materially altered. The House Ways and Means Amendment was accepted, so there is a 20% minimum revenue share built into H 127 now. Additionally, there was an instance of amendment in the House Ways and Means proposal that would prohibit, or excuse me, it would require the Department of Liquor and Lottery to establish a process where the owner of a joint bank account could exclude the joint bank account from use on sports wagering services.
Does that exist in other states?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
This might be a novel practice.
And I wonder, so a piece that was always important to me from the study committee, I wonder if it survived that you can only use a debit card and not a credit card.
Credit cards are prohibited
Okay.
under H
Oh, good.
127.
When we talked about problem gambling, that's one that kind of like,
Oh,
in
it's a
my mind, felt
big
in that
one.
category.
And the Sports Betting Committee was careful to recommend that the language be that credit cards could not be used to establish an account or to wager, and that persisted through H 127.
Okay.
Prohibition is across the board.
Senator Grissom.
And remind me how the online platform knows the difference between a debit and a credit card.
I am
I
not
mean-
certain. That might be a question for the operators to
They know
answer,
where
but
I
They
am,
know.
never
They would-
mind if it's a credit or debit.
they would likely ask just for a checking account. That's, at least from my experience with a lot of the secure sites, what they're actually asking for is a routing and account number that
Got
they'll
it.
be able to pull from,
Got it.
not for card numbers.
And that exists in other states.
Yes, and the credit card prohibition, you might recall, was a recommendation from the National Council on Problem Gambling, and their model provisions have been adopted by a number of states now. So Vermont will not be the first.
Okay. So anything else you feel we should know about, Bill?
There was one amendment from a member, Representative Byron, who proposed to increase the criminal penalties associated with offering sports wagering without a license, and then to apply the same level of fines to the state's operators who violate a provision of the chapter. And that would be any of the statutory provisions, any of the procedures adopted by the department, and any of the contract provisions. The department could then apply a fine that would have to, of course, go through some sort of, in that particular instance, court review. And it would allow the department, if any provision of the chapter is violated, to terminate the contract with the operator.
Okay.
There's some questions about that came up on the floor that are lingering, which is why I have Title 13 with me this morning, about whether the criminal provisions are in line with existing criminal provisions for gambling and lotteries. The answer is yes.
The suspense was funny.
Those are really the only updates on H127
Okay.
that I have after our kind of 50,000 foot review yesterday.
Okay, and Madam Finance Chair, I imagine we still want to keep our conversation here limited to the policy framework and focus on this revenue share piece in finance, unless you want to preview it here somehow.
It's up to you. It's probably helpful for this committee to get a full picture, because this is an S bill. So assume that the H bill that came out will come here and
Yeah.
then go to finance.
Right, so it's on,
Yeah.
it'll be on its way this week, next week.
And we'll have it Tuesday.
So, we can have the commissioner talk about the path for that revenue, which, does anyone want to talk about the, I'm struggling to remember what happened with the money for mental health and problem gambling. That's still my last, like, big picture question.
So the House Appropriations Amendment was accepted, which amended the House Ways and Means Amendment, which amended the GovOps Amendment. And the result of that is that there's going to be a sports wagering fund structured as an enterprise fund where all of the fees and revenue are collected. And then there's going to be annual appropriations put to the Department of Mental Health for purposes of the problem gambling program. The bill has an appropriation for fiscal year 2024 of $250,000 and for FY 2025 of $500,000.
Okay.
Initially, there is a $550,000 appropriation from the sports wagering fund as well as the Department of Liquor and Lottery. So if I'm adding FY 2024 numbers up, that's $800,000 that's going to come out of the sports wagering fund initially before revenues and fees are actually collected.
Okay, so we'll hear a little bit about this from the commissioner, but Scott, I'd also like to make sure we get the Department of Mental Health in to talk about what that buys us.
And how is that program carried out?
Well,
Was it done,
the commissioner, I think, can speak to what has been happening, which is not enough.
well, I have a feeling that programs like that end up being carried out by your local designated agencies, and I just want to make sure we get them some funding.
Well, you'll hear about sort of how that has been happening, but not maybe working so well.
You'll also see in H127 that there's a line drawn between the actual problem gambling services and what the state is doing with this program. The program is put in place to license counselors to kind of organize all the various networks to make sure that there's education and awareness about the resources that are available, but perhaps not to provide direct counseling services. And that was one of the recommendations that came out of the sports betting study committee, was to not
So
include counseling
who's
services.
going to provide
Those.
Well, that's the commissioner and the
Yeah,
mental
I
health.
think that's, I just want to make sure that if we're going to increase the workload on your local mental health agencies, that we get them some money.
Well, we'll talk about sort of how to not increase the workload, we farmed it out outside of Vermont, and that didn't work at all. So,
Right.
Okay,
shopped it out. I don't know. Data collection was always really important to me during the study committee. Do you know where that landed? Where did that land?
There's no provision specific to data collection. Are you talking about problem gambling statistics and things like that? I know that one of the recommendations from the Sports Betting Study Committee was that the Department of Mental Health would provide in its study and report on problem gambling in Vermont demographic information. That particular call out didn't end up in H 127. So DMH is going to study the impact of sports wagering on problem gambling in Vermont, but it's left somewhat broad in what their reporting is going to be to the General Assembly.
I have an interest.
Yeah, I think a lot of.
Did you want me to touch on briefly some of the alcohol pieces that are not in H 470?
Oh, they're in the bills that we have
Are
under.
people ready to move to alcohol? We've done sort of big picture.
Yeah, but we'll talk about sports betting in a future meeting.
Yes, we'll
Yeah.
hopefully walk through the entire.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have possession of the bill yet, so we'll walk through it. We'll look at their witness list and see. who
Okay,
great they're from. And you can start to request witnesses, or, you know, we have
Oh,
And we want to look at the witness list that they had, I mean, which is always a good jumping off point. Okay, so you could look at the witness list on their website.
great, thanks.
alcohol.
It's Friday.
So H 470, which Ashley will be able to very professionally and excellently walk you through the details of, has three pieces.
Sorry, which
Technical-
one are you starting?
H 470.
Yeah,
Technical cleanup to the term cider in Title VII to change it to hard cider.
So that takes care of one of the whole bills that we have.
There's a second piece that increases the number of special events permits that can be acquired from 10 to 20. And I see some laughter because the number has gone up, then down, and now it's going back up again.
It's
Over the
like
last
every
6
year we
years.
deal with special events for.
Then the final piece is an extension, well, not an extension, the removal of a sunset on 7 BSA section 230, which is the sale of alcoholic beverages for off-premises consumption. You can think of it as alcohol to go
It's
for
the alcohol
curbside
provision.
pickup.
Right, it's the COVID alcohol go provision. And that section,
Repeal of sunset.
Yes.
So we're keeping it? We're keeping
Well,
that?
that's there's a proposal. to-
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you have a few other bills, the two that come to mind immediately that are not in H 470, that I think have already gotten some introduction in this committee, potentially, would be permits for manufacturers who have off-premises, essentially satellite tasting rooms.
So are you
Or
shifting
serving
to the
locations.
S bills?
So did people have questions on H 470? Is that,
Well,
it's pretty,
yeah, it's very straightforward. We're just gonna have discussion.
so, and that covers S 86, one of the bills we have received, but now you're talking about S 107,
Oh, is
an
it?
act related things.
Is that what you're jumping to? Okay, just give us the.
Now, the 50,000 foot view is that this issue has surfaced in a number of ways, has had a number of solutions over the last 10 years. The most recent solution was to add manufacturers to the list of persons or parties or licensees eligible to acquire first and third class licenses. Apparently, that is not an adequate solution for some of the issues manufacturers are experiencing because it has to be contiguous with their manufacturing location. And they would like to have non-contiguous serving
right.
locations where they can provide what is commonly termed as full pour service of their alcoholic beverages. So 5 ounces of wine, 16 ounces of beer, rather than the sample serving size that's written into statute.
for new people to the committee, we might just remind them what a first and second and third class license is. We'll get you a list of every
Right.
license
I always like
And-
to know.
and what
From
it is.
from my municipal experience, I
You remember
dealt
most
with
of it?
that.
Would you like a list of what each?
Sure, I would like a
We should
list,
have one
because
right
every
up.
year I need to.
We ought to have one posted,
Yeah.
The
actually.
commissioner probably has initial.
That'd be great.
A little.
Thank you.
Yes.
First and third on premises service of alcoholic beverages, things bars and restaurants. First is for things that don't come from the Department of Liquor and Lottery and that are in broader distribution. So that would be your malt beverages, finest beverages, and ready to drink spirits beverages. Third class licenses are the bar and restaurant license to serve spirits and Board of 5 clients, which comes from the department. Second class licenses is your retail locations, grocery stores, convenience stores, etc.
Thank you.
Fourth class license, manufacturers who want to have a serving location on their
Where they make
premises.
it.
And they can have a fourth class license, and they could also get a first or third class license, and they could also get an outside service permit. And there are a lot, I think there
And
are.
a special
I think
event.
there are, I joke, there's like 100 different licenses and permits that are listed in the fees section in Title VII, because you can get a permit for every type of service and sale of alcoholic beverages in a million different locations.
And we'll probably do the same thing with cannabis over time.
So the bill would allow manufacturers to have these satellite locations. There's definitely some policy choices that the committee will want to investigate or may want to investigate moving forward. For example, there are restrictions on vertical integration elsewhere in Title VII that prevent manufacturers from also owning, for example, the distribution companies in the retail service locations, because it violates kind of the 3-tier spine that holds our alcoholic beverages system together. And it also forces some perhaps unfair competition in the market when you have a manufacturer that also works in the same space as first and third class licensees, bars and restaurants that have to comply with, for example, Department of Health guidelines for sanitary environments, and that also have to serve food.
So someone did reach out and say that they feel like this is a complete reopening of the Tide House.
Yes,
Wow.
Tide House, the Tide
That's
House
the
law. There are already exceptions in the Tide House law, for example, for malt beverage manufacturers,
We did that, like,
but the Tide House laws are holding that 3-tier system together.
So if we took this up, we'd hear a lot of opposition, and I just don't know if we have time for that on this particular bill.
good question.
I just want to name that now, because we've already had people reach out to testify, and I don't know that it's gonna rise to the level of priority that it's been for a long time.
The other issues that I'm aware of, I think, well, only one of the issues that are floating around in my mind, I think has a bill. I can't remember because, again, very, very tiring time of year, would be the direct to consumer shipping of
Yes.
spirits.
Yeah,
That's not 107, is it?
no, and I think the commissioner would have a study or some update on that.
Yeah, we have a pilot program.
Yeah, okay, so we'll look at that issue.
And that's for, we have direct to consumer.
For wine and.
And ready to drink spirits beverages.
And remind me on distilled spirits. No,
That's what this bill would do.
So Ashley, you were gonna take us through 470 more.
470.
Oh, well, we kind of, okay.
We did.
that. But we want to get you in the witness chair and hear what you very much feel, so.
Richie gets a gold star for the most number of alcohol bills introduced in the Senate.
Yes, well, I also made him be police officer.
What's the bill, 407?
470.
470.
And we have a copy of it here.
And it's passed by the House.
But at H 470.
That's the
847, that's why.
second reading.
Yeah, it was voted out.
Okay.
It's fully passed by the House, so it's
Fully
passed
passed
third
by the
reading.
We have, it's in our committee, that's right. I'm sorry.
It's here.
This is the one that's here.
If we had a bulletin board, it would be up.
Do you remember if this was a voice vote in the House?
Yes, yeah, it was. So for the record, my name is Ashley Angel. I am a law clerk for the Office of Legislative Counsel, and I am Tucker's law clerk. So the overall purpose, like he went over before, is a technical change for the term cider to hard cider. And then it's to increase the annual special events permit on the limit for fourth class licenses. And it's also a repeal of the sunset on 7 BSA, section 230, which is the sale of alcoholic beverages for off-premise consumption. One addition that we did to this bill is also to add a report regarding public health impacts from the repeal of that law that went into effect during COVID, where people were allowed to take ready-to-drink spirits out from restaurants.
So I just want to pause on each one to see if there's questions. I was stuck looking at the definition of hard cider.
Sure,
Just making sure, because we did something on cider last year, and I just want to make sure we're finally done with this definition for a little while. And so now there is a different definition of cider that's non-alcoholic somewhere.
Yeah, the cider we drink every day.
Okay,
You know,
I
it's
don't know
just
why we
regular
ever call
cider.
this one cider, but it's not defined.
I don't think cider is defined elsewhere, it's used elsewhere.
It's used
Okay, so if we define hard cider here as more than 1% alcohol, then other cider
we
will
drink
be
at
less
Halloween
than
and every
1%
day.
alcohol, like we don't need, it's just cider.
Yeah,
that
it's just
comes
a
like regular
fruit,
cider
it's
is.
just one of our,
Okay.
our fruity beverages that we have.
I still
and make
might
in
just
Vermont.
ask
Just to
Senator
be
Starr.
clear, 7 VSA section 2 is expressly only for Title 7, which is your alcoholic beverages, tobacco, and cannabis title. So unless there's a reference to non-alcoholic ciders that I'm unaware of in Title 7,
I
the
doubt.
definition's not gonna affect anything else.
So would a company have to write hard cider on an alcoholic beverage now?
No. Our commissioner's shaking.
No, but hard cider is the term used by the Texas Trade Bureau
Oh,
at
right.
the federal level, and if they have labeling requirements, for example, for packaging, they will likely require
that's
hard
making it.
cider to be used.
Okay,
But we,
so Commissioner, sorry,
the state wouldn't need to, as Tucker's pointing out, it's done at the federal level.
okay,
Labeling is regulated at the federal level.
okay.
I mean, we
And
do
so
have
just to
hard
follow up,
cider.
so then if something has a certain amount of alcohol, it has to be labeled as such, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
because that's your point, is right, so
Yeah.
the consumer knows.
I just want to make sure we're like done with this definition for a little while, because I don't.
But this one makes some sense.
This one makes more sense
Oh, yeah.
than what we did.
Yeah, so I'm,
Okay. Yeah, great. So we're done. We were moved on from hard cider, I think, tonight.
Okay. It's just several technical changes throughout
Mhm.
Title 7. And then starting in section, oh my goodness, section.
so all these first sections, 1 through 4, are
Are
just
technical changes.
adding hard to cider. And then so the other additional substantive changes are sections 5 on.
In section 5, you'll see
But let me just, sorry. So we're maintaining. We're not, we don't have different words for hard cider that's less than 7% alcohol or more than 7% alcohol.
I want to know what percent alcohol the cider is in my refrigerator that pops its top.
Was it non-alcoholic?
Yeah, because it does definitely get more feisty. It
Also.
becomes more feisty as it ages.
Yeah, but I'm gonna want to return to this because I struggle with the idea. If we're finally done with this same definition, but one has less than 7%. I guess we do that with beer, but I'm not sure. So,
Madam Chair, that provision you were looking at is actually the tax provision. So the delineation between
okay.
7% more or less is the difference in the per gallon tax.
but they wouldn't be sold in different locations.
No, same substance, just subject to a different gallonage tax at the manufacturer.
So just like high ABV specialty beer is still sold in beer outlets.
It's still a malt beverage.
Okay.
Yes, until it gets over 16%.
I was gonna say, until
alcohol,
it
it's
gets
Okay.
16%. Then
If
it
you
goes
find,
to Wendy's operation.
a yeast that will tolerate that level of alcohol when it's, well, anyway,
Yeah,
very hard to make a beer with more than 16% alcohol.
okay.
Well, that's good to know.
helpful.
And often very hard to drink them.
Often, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we went through the text change from cider to hard cider, and then section 5 addresses Title 7, section 204, and it amends this section and ups the amount of fourth class licenses permitted to fourth class licensees from 10 to 20.
But it doesn't change the cost, that's the cost per license.
Yes, yes,
And that's for an event? Is that the event license that you were talking about?
yes. These events are,
Commissioner.
Sorry, I need to correct. These are not special events. I know
No,
you
it
are
says special
referring to
events.
them as special events.
oh,
They are not. Fourth class licenses are granted by 2 manufacturers. They are allowed for a location, a fourth class license location, which is a tasting room and a farmer's market permit. So they're not the special event permit that is a different animal that I can talk about. So I just want to clarify that. I know it gets confusing.
Yeah.
The fourth class license is not a special event. It's a fourth class license permit that allows them a tasting room or a farmer's market.
So,
It's
so it's
not-
a location, it's not an
This-
event.
This, correct.
Okay,
It's a farmer's market permit and, and a tasting room location. And the point of this was to increase the number of farmer's market permits.
okay.
You can get.
Correct.
So
that
Because
one
the
person.
distillers-
So you
the
can go
distillers-
all around the state
Correct.
to every farmer's
Correct.
market.
And this Vermont distillers are looking to have more opportunities
Right.
to have people sample their product, become aware of the product, and then buy their product.
Have a really
That
good
was-
time at the farmer's market.
Wanted to clarify, because it gets really confusing.
Yeah.
Well,
Was
clarify.
20% compromise, like, was it like?
Originally, the department had suggested 30
Yeah,
and
Montpelier Farmers
the 20 is fine, and I think the industry is fine with that. They said that some of them don't have the workforce to be able to do that, so they're fine with 20.
Okay.
thank you so much.
You're welcome, I'm sorry to interrupt.
You can really get a
10
buzz
o'clock
on
in the
this,
morning.
if that's your objective.
So in Title 7, PSA section 224, it also increases the amount of fourth class licensees licensed to a manufacturer or rectifier. As Commissioner said.
So that's the fee section and the actual granting permission to have 20.
I believe so, yes.
So Miss Ashley, when was the last time this fee was raised? We have not had a fee bill for 7 years. I'm just curious, when was the last time this fee was
Nobody
raised?
knows, then we can just get the answer later.
Yeah, and I want to know, does it, because fees are required to cover the cost of the of the work that it takes to produce the license. I'm just curious, and we'll be asking the commissioner if this still, well, she may not be able to answer, but I'm going to ask anyway, if this still covers the cost of actually producing and administering these fees, these licenses.
I will definitely look that up for you and.
Thank you. I'd just like to know when the last time was we raised it.
Of course.
Senator Harris.
And just a follow-up on that, good question, is the fee per license or just a flat fee, no matter
It's a
the
flat
amount?
fee up to, so we've changed the fee,
Oh,
the way it's read now is
It's
up
not
to
20,
10 is $70.
For 20 spots, they can do this.
Correct.
Did
Making
they,
sure that I clarified that.
did they discuss?
No,
taking
no,
the-
I'm sorry, I did, it's per.
That's what I was
per.
thinking. That's why I didn't
Sorry,
think they
it is.
changed
Per,
it.
per.
Okay.
It hasn't changed. We
Yeah,
didn't change the fee because it's per.
Yeah,
$7 per fee, per permit.
okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, sorry.
Do we
Per
need
permit,
to-
But not per farmer's market, they serve it.
If you,
So it's not
If-
20 times 70 if they go to 20 farmers
it
markets.
is, if
Ah.
you submit your application that way for each Saturday, you could do it that way. Or what you could do if you're smart is you submit a permit for the entire season. You do from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and that's one permit at one location. Woodstock, for example, farmer's market the entire season, that's one farmer's market permit that costs you $70.
Got it. But if they go to 20 farmers markets during the course of that season.
Correct, those are 20 different permits times 70, correct.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
So the
That's, I-
fee didn't change,
What about?
just the amount, the number of permits you're able to seek
got it.
is proposed to be changed.
No fee increase.
No fee increase.
And we hope the revenue from the farmers market makes that $70 just.
It's one
be-
bottle.
Hmm?
It's one bottle of hard liquor.
We should look at the wording of that language too, because it's not clear. I would think that's 20, but whatever, we can look at that when we get to it, right?
yeah, and,
Okay.
and ultimately, like, the wording might be our jurisdiction, but the fee.
Oh, yeah,
Would
well,
be something
well,
to
well, now we know the
recommend.
intent.
So the
that's-
fee
that's
now
great.
goes to the afternoon.
Okay, the sunset
There
repeal is
might
pretty
be.
straightforward, but some people haven't had a lot of time with the.
Would that go to finance because there's no change in the fee?
It still
No,
would,
there's no change in the fee.
but you're increasing the number of permits people can get, so I have a
We
feeling
don't typically
Bloomer is.
Only
Look at
the
that.
Senate secretary.
Listen, Bloomer is definitely something to finance, given the rest of the things he said.
I don't think it should go to finance, frankly.
Well, it won't go very long. But,
It will take up less time than dispatch.
I mean, we get things that had, but I think it's fees, setting fees or raising fees.
Yeah.
Was changing fees in the underlying bill.
Yeah.
But I don't think if there's no change, it's gonna go to us.
So-
But it does affect the revenue of the state, because it's increasing the number of permits you can receive.
Well, anytime there's, I don't know.
I don't think we need to see it twice, but that Bloomer will.
We don't,
Senator
right?
Oh, it's okay. My question's on the next
Well,
section.
natural
It's something
resources
that
may have a
increases the
problem
amount
with
of
the effect
Books
on
that you
that.
sell, you don't change
Maybe they'll get.
if there was such a thing.
I don't know that we have a permit for the number of books you can sell, which we do
You know what I
writing. Senator Harris.
No, but you're right. I just have a question on the sunset section, which might be where.
Yeah, let's
Senator
go to the
Clarkson's
to-go
question
cocktails.
was.
Wow.
And
Okay, so to-go
I'll
cocktails.
get it done.
Sure. So Title VII BSA, Section 230, as you all know, is the repeal of sunset provision. This section was originally added during the COVID response years and was temporarily authorized to continue for 3 years. The sunset's currently set for July 1st of this year. And it's an automatic repeal. Present bill works to create a repeal of the repeal, thus creating a permanent law for the state. And I'd allow for permanent delivery and curbside pickup of unopened containers of alcoholic beverages from first, third, and fourth class licensees. The first and third class licensees would be able to continue to provide delivery and curbside pickup of alcoholic beverages that are securely affixed with tamper evidence seals. And bearing a label that states the beverage contains alcohol, also listing ingredients and serving size. These licensees may sell between the hours of 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. and must sell the food and beverage.
Senator Clarkson.
No, my question really is with section 8, which was I had thought, and Tucker can help. Oh, sorry, Tucker.
Yes.
Okay. Oh my God, 2 devices and a book. He is equipped. My question is, I thought we put this study in place last year, and agree, that as anyone with any memory remembers, I'm not fond of this section. But I agreed to it because we did a study. I thought we were going to study it last year, the impact of with law enforcement and, just I thought we were already doing this study. And so,
The study on 7 VSA section 230 that was established when 230 was put in place really had two components. One was the public safety component. The other was what are the net economic benefits to licensees and to the state. And that information is available. I know that Skylar Janess from the department.
Yeah,
provided
the department
information.
submitted, you all have a copy of that assessment.
on the economic impact.
Both, the assessment of.
Okay, and so
safety.
could we bring that to the fore and maybe Scott, you could identify and send it around to us as we begin to do this?
Do you want testimony on it?
Yeah, I'd love to have Skylar
I can
present.
talk about it right now,
Yeah.
when I'm ready, when you're ready for me.
Okay.
Great, okay, good, because I thought we'd already done this.
Well,
We
section 8's a little different.
Oh,
And
okay,
House
how-
GovOps wanted, before they passed this through, to have something in place from the Department of Health to study public health impacts. So they felt they had information on law enforcement, the economic benefits.
Yes.
Now they wanted to know, now that this is permanent, what are the public health impacts?
So they had the Department of Health in to talk about the feasibility of the study.
I was not there, so.
Do you
So-
remember?
Did David come and speak, David Englander? Or,
I don't recall him coming
no,
in.
I guess not.
Yeah.
Wendy's shaking her.
Okay,
So,
so we'd have to get Scott, we had the Department of Health on this study to see, because it doesn't sound feasible. So go ahead.
no, I
So
simply
I know
want
the
us to
impact
look.
of to-go cocktails from the,
No,
our Department of Health's pretty busy.
yeah, they're way busy and I don't think they have, anyway, we'll wait to hear from them. But I would like to have us all look at this report from Wendy's chart before we,
Yeah,
as we discuss.
absolutely.
Section 7.
The ones
That's
that we have
all
already
I'm-
commissioned.
That's all I'm asking for.
Okay.
And the
Yeah.
question that I had was related to that, which is, do we know the number of to-go cocktails that were?
It's in the report.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
a
Okay.
lot.
I don't have the I can talk
Yeah,
about it.
you can
Okay.
preview it and then we'll
Yes.
revisit the full report.
One of the challenges is it's very popular.
Oh,
Who's
yeah.
left
That's a
those
challenge.
on my doorstep? I've had
See how I feel.
deliveries.
I know.
Burger King for a neighbor just left on my doorstep.
Burger King?
I've had food deliveries, but no one has ever mistakenly left
No.
cocktails on my.
They haven't?
No.
Oh, that is
Well, not yet.
But I
disappointing.
mean, this was food for a neighbor who was sick. And they didn't ring the bell. Fortunately, it was summer and the screen door, I heard them. Or there would have been a whole dinner left on my doorstep with no indication as to where it should go.
So this doesn't actually allow delivery of alcohol, so I'll clarify that.
Mhm.
No
Okay.
delivery.
Right.
I
so-
can't call and have the party
No,
get
no,
refreshed.
But you can pick it up.
I
Correct.
can go pick it up.
And
Any more questions for Ashley?
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Nice work, Ashley.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate your time.
before you disappear, can I just ask, what are you're working with Tucker and who else?
Michael O'Grady.
Okay, so you're covering booze and you're covering
Wastewater.
gambling.
Wastewater.
Perfect.
They're connected.
And what else?
Rose and Beast.
Booze and beasts.
I do municipal, I do the lottery, I do agriculture, and I do environmental health.
Am I gonna see you this afternoon?
For,
The miscellaneous agricultural subjects bill.
I'll be listening in, that was Michael's bill.
I know.
So thank you all so much, I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
I've told them they can only have
So we have a
two,
little
not
under
five
20
farmers
minutes
this
for my
afternoon.
one
The
and
committee
only
was very
evaluation.
tired.
Yeah.
And would probably get very annoyed and tempted with five farmers.
It'll be very high level and it'll
Ashley?
help us. That is Tucker.
Tucker? Tucker, you need more coffee in here.
Devices and books that
More
also
coffee.
deal with water.
Tucker is really tired.
I know the feeling.
I know.
Yesterday I was having trouble walking straight.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
did you, okay.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Wendy Knight. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. Nice to see you all again.
It's great.
Okay, so real high level then, I'll invite me in any time and I'll talk in more detail.
We
So,
absolutely will.
And thank you for letting me interrupt you, Ashley, on your overview. So let's talk about sports betting. We heard that it passed the House by voice vote last night. I just want to quickly, there's the original bill that passed out of the House, operations, government ops, Tucker walked you through. And then there's the House Ways and Means Amendment, then there's the Harrison House Appropriations Amendment, and then there's the Byron Penalty Amendment. So I just want to flag a couple of things. First of all, the House did a tremendous job of taking what we put together with the Sports Betting Study Committee recommendations. They used that as the base, and they really got into a lot of the parameters that we had suggested around problem gambling. And so they did I think a really thorough and a really good job of creating a great bill for you all to consider and to discuss. So I will say that. A couple of things I wanted to point out in the House Ways and Means Amendment. There are two things, sorry?
You don't have the amendments in the package.
Right, we don't have
Okay.
any statement in the package.
Well, maybe we should wait for third reading.
Yeah, so just high level, I'll come in and talk more general, but I just want to talk about two things that are in here. One is the operator fee. We're talking about fees, they're supposed to cover the cost. The way we've structured it here is 550,000 is the determination from the department of what our ongoing administrative cost would be for sports betting. So we've got $550,000 nut to cover, right? And so the way it's structured here is that it's based on if there's one operator, it's 550. If there's two, then they start dividing that, right? You start to take 550 and you divide it. If there's two operators, you divide it by two. If there's four, you divide it by four. I had a conversation with the Chair Coinheiser, and she was asking me whether or not, wouldn't it make sense that if you have more operators, you're going to have more time and more energy to regulate this. So I said, this is all moving quickly. And I was like, I don't really have that information. But since then, we do have some more information, and I will have a suggested change to that so that the base would be 550. And then incrementally, you will have more time and money spent on reviewing general counsel, reviewing the operating contracts, the audit information, looking at the advertising plans, looking at the problem gambling plans, et cetera. So I will come back with a recommendation for changing that so that it would be something perhaps like 550 if there's one operator, and then each additional operator might be 50K is something. So I'll come back with something. I just wanted to let you know that we've gotten more information, and that will appeal and address what the chair's thought was, which makes sense. The other thing I will point out is that in the Harris Amendment, which changes it back to the original, we're going to have an enterprise fund. That makes sense. That was a
The
recommendation.
appropriations
Correct.
was
Who's here?
Oh, I'm
Jim.
sorry, Representative Harrison.
Oh, okay.
Yes. No, I'm sorry. I'm
Harrison,
sorry.
the original Harris.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
and the runner of the
March
basketball
Madness,
pool.
So,
Is he, which
Jim
you know,
Harrison.
right,
Yeah.
Jim Harrison. The one thing I will point out is the funding of the problem gambling. I'm going to bring you back to the initial discussion in House Government Ops. The recommendation in the Sports Betting Study Committee came from the National Council of Problem Gambling, and they recommended 2.5% of the wagering revenue goes to a problem gambling fund. That's what started in House Government Ops. And then they started wanting to have a floor, right? And I had made the comment that right now the department has 250,000 that we use for problem gambling for the Vermont lottery.
Right.
And that could be your seed money / floor. And So they put the floor in there, and then I came back and testified, and I said, you should not have a floor. If you are worried that there's not a sufficient money in the problem gambling fund, double the percentage. Instead of having it be 2.5%, have it be 5% and remove the floor. Well, they left the 5% in there and they kept the full floor. Now they've gotten rid of the 5%. So my suggestion is, so right now it's an appropriation of 250 for the first year, FY24, 500 for the second year, FY25. There's no provision thereafter. So my suggestion is that you simply make it a 5% of the wagering revenue that comes to the department gets automatically allocated to the mental health for the problem gambling.
This
That
is why
way,
I've always hated vice taxes, because we don't put 5% of tobacco tax towards cessation and prevention. We just take all the money for other things.
so this way you're funding it organically, right? You're allowing the fund to grow based on the need. You're not artificially funding it just by saying a floor of 250 first year, a floor of 500 the second,
Right.
and then you have no mechanism thereafter,
And
which I think was an oversight.
will you pause, and especially for Senator Cummings' questions, you illuminated the reality of how we're spending the money now, which is probably not working.
I will, yes. So we have a 250,000 in our budget. And we have a contract with the Howard Center. And we, last year, for example, gave them 125,000. And I'm not bad mouthing the Howard Center. I've had plenty of conversations with the Howard Center. The way it's structured is it's referral based. So it's $125,000. Last year, we had 10 referrals.
That was
So
it.
that was it. So to me, that suggests either we don't really have a problem gambling, a problem
Or
gambling
not
issue,
articulate.
or both, or we're not doing enough public awareness, consumer education. And so in October, when that grant, I was looking at all of the data and I realized that was a very ineffective use of taxpayer dollars. That what we needed to do is, first of all, we needed to structure it as an RFP and put it out to bid. You can't just contract with an entity. And also we needed to make it be much more about public awareness and a consumer education. So we're changing that. And one of the thought process, so anyway, so I'm just sharing with you the experience that we had, which it just needs in the problem gambling section of the sports betting bill. It does talk about public awareness, educating players about, the resources available. So those are the two things I wanted to flag on the sports betting is.
Maybe we should add digital phone addiction too.
Do you want me to talk very briefly about, can I talk very briefly about the alcohol bills?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. But that would cover everything that's moving that's under your jurisdiction
The alcohol
this
bills?
year, if we
Yeah.
talk about alcohol.
Yes.
Well, the ones from the house anyway, that are done.
Yeah, there's nothing else. There's nothing related to the overall lottery.
No,
I don't know if a
No.
study passed or something.
No.
Some of the bills that were.
no,
It's,
no.
it's very interesting. The lottery gets less, and now that you represent both, and now
Yes.
that you're the commissioner of both, it is amazing how much less attention the lottery gets.
It raises a lot more money. Vermont Lottery Day is over in the card room. Today is Vermont Lottery Day.
Yes, so there's
Please
a
go by.
dog there.
He's
Are
a
we
service
betting on
dog.
whether the dog will get up? Or
Pardon me?
I'm just trying, there's a dog there.
It's Tom's service dog. We have
Oh,
a
it's
new
a dog.
marketing manager and he's a service dog.
Oh,
He serves,
nice to have.
yeah, he serves a function.
I'm trying to get a service dog in the legislature.
I have to say it's increased the morale and just the feeling in the office in general, because when you have a dog to pet, how can you be?
Yeah.
And that's,
There.
I wish we had. a
This
dog
week,
in here.
I need a dog.
Yeah, you do.
How about a capital cat? I think a capital cat would be lovely too.
Well, now, as long as it's not one of those in the nursing home that knows when you're about to die and comes and sits on your bed.
Oh, shoot.
That actually.
Wow.
That's been, that has been documented.
That could self-identify.
Yeah.
People should Okay. consider using.
All right, we're going from death to,
Yes,
Alcohol.
Weapons
Gambling.
in the
I
general.
thought we were doing
Yes.
alcohol now.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. Can I talk a little bit about alcohol?
Yes, please.
Because I'll come in and have lots of conversations about the sports betting.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So the liquor omnibus bill, Tucker and Ashley ran through it. The only things I will mention is that in the beginning of the session, I had conversations with Representative Byron when he was introducing some stuff on the House. There are two technical changes that the administration and the department had put forward. They didn't make the omnibus bill.
Okay.
They didn't make it in the House, so I'd like to
Yeah.
ask you, I'll send you language.
Great.
One does pertain to the festival permits, the special event, and the sampling. What we did in Act 70 2 years ago, we did address it. It inadvertently left out a use case for us. So what we need to do, it inadvertently,
What does that mean?
it means that we inadvertently, in changing the festival permit, didn't allow for organizations like chambers of commerce and towns, folks that want to have a festival. It's not a beer festival. It's not meant primarily for consuming alcohol. It left us with no viable path forward to give those cultural organizations and municipalities a path forward to get a license to serve alcohol when the primary function wasn't a beer fest or a wine fest. So there are a lot of cultural events that happen
tons.
around the state where people want to have a local distiller or a local winery or a local brewery, and it became very complicated for us. We had to do workarounds, and so we want to go back to allowing that to happen. And so we have a
North Branch Winery satisfied.
I think you're good. I don't know, but I think you're gonna want to talk to the Vermont Grape and Wine Council.
Yes.
They have
Yeah,
a newly
okay.
convened Vermont Grape and
Okay, I just
Vermont.
know he had my number on.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
And
yes. I would recommend you talk to the Vermont Grape and Wine Council
Okay.
as opposed to one particular
okay.
vineyard.
So we'll have
or-
David come in, but I mean, I will just say, I'm interested in hearing if 20 is enough, or if they'd rather have 25 or 30, but otherwise we do the little thing every single year.
But that's not the special permit.
It's
She's
not.
talking
Oh,
about.
No,
okay,
that-
sorry.
No,
That's
no,
just
no, no,
farm-
no.
that's
So
just
that-
farm-
Oh, that didn't even make it in.
Yeah.
Oh,
There are
Or didn't
two
make
things
it in.
she's talking
Correct.
about.
Two things that we will send you language that we would ask you to add into
Sounds
the
good.
omnibus bill.
Okay.
And that's the cleanup of the festival, sampling, special
Yeah.
events. The other are some truly technical changes to what's existing right now that's inaccurate. It's defining the board and the department. And so we have a couple of technical corrections around that. For example, in statute, it says that the board prepares a budget. Well, the board doesn't prepare a budget. I prepare a budget for finance and management. So things like that, truly technical corrections.
So may
Yeah.
I just ask, did they review these ideas, your proposals and make a
No,
conscious decision
no,
not, or did
no.
it just come
That
too late?
it never made it to the omnibus bill.
Oh, okay,
It never made it in.
right, but I guess I'm asking, did they make a choice
No,
not to include it,
no,
or
I
did
was
they just
told-
not have enough
they
time to
said-
review it?
Added in the Senate.
Oh, okay, oh, they did
Love
it.
when they
Let's
say
have
that.
the
Yeah,
Senate
added
fix
in
it.
We never do that.
We fix things all the
Yeah, but
time.
we're-
So I want to
We
add it in the
never
Senate.
say
No
add it.
problem.
Okay, so that's the 470. Just very briefly on these other bills.
Wait,
which
did we go through to-go cocktails?
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
The report,
The report.
Not
which
just
we
the
will
report,
read.
but just
I
to-go
apologize for
cocktails.
not having.
I'm
read
sorry. So we went over the increase in the farmer's market permits, the fourth class
Mhm.
license. Our report indicates, and you have copies, I'll just summarize it. There was a little bit of use, not a lot. First of all, we had very little response rate
Oh,
to
that's-
the survey.
That's too bad.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, I don't know the number, maybe 47, maybe not even. I mean, they're very little response rate.
47.
To
Restaurants.
what survey?
Don't quote me,
Oh.
forget I said
Well, that's
that.
not, I thought you were gonna say like 4, because 47 is.
No,
Well,
but
maybe
out
it
of
wasn't
100 for
47. We
restaurants.
have we have 1,400 third and first class licenses.
Yeah, I mean,
So we
anything
had
under-
very little response rate, I will say that. But what it did indicate, what we were asking is, how did it help you generate sales? Like,
Right.
did it help you generate sales? So there's again, there's some figures in there that it modestly improves sales. So the point is, it works for some people. If it's an additional revenue stream, there's no reason not to offer it. On the public safety side,
Yeah,
there were no violations. There was nothing that indicated that there was a problem with suddenly to-go cocktails
Right.
I was
contributing to.
drinking my martini in the
Yeah.
car.
Correct, none of
That's
that.
exactly what I asked last time. Like, it's not a ball jar, like cosmopolitan.
Right.
That people are.
Right.
yeah, that was, but that was.
I
the
saw it
question.
in a flip top.
But so we're hearing there was nothing that
Correct,
indicated.
there was
that
no
was a
negative public safety implications of the to-go cocktail.
So did we,
So we
Oh,
looked at,
did we survey the state's attorneys? I mean, who weighed in on that? The law enforcement?
so we're a
Yeah.
law enforcement agency, the
Right.
department, okay, so we have data when we have what's called the POLD program, place of last drink. So when there's a DUI, we are, and there's an indication that there is an establishment, the nexus is the licensee, someone was drinking at a bar, they got into a crash. We go investigate, our law enforcement investigators investigate and find out what happened at that place of last drink. And was there over serving? Was that person already intoxicated? Did you serve them, over serve them? There was no POLD cases related to to-go cocktails. The only violation was in the very beginning, when one of the licensees did not serve food. We educated them and there were no more violations.
Great,
So
that's.
there is no indication that allowing to-go cocktails or curbside pickup is negatively contributing to public safety.
If
Or
I'm
that's the
getting
big-
a to-go cocktail, how does the place serve food? I can get it to go, I go to Sarducci's, I have my dinner, and I want to take a cocktail
You
home.
cannot do that. You have to
Okay.
take the food to go.
I have
It's
to take
meant as
the
an
food
addition.
to
Like a
go.
picnic.
It's
You
not
pick it up
meant
for a
to,
picnic.
you can't just go and order a cocktail to go. You have
Okay.
to order
It's
the
the
meal.
cocktails in the cans, I guess I'm thinking about. I can go buy those at,
Sure, you can buy those in the
That's
grocery
not like
store.
buying beer.
It's not a
It's
to-go
low ABV.
cocktail.
okay.
Yeah,
Love
okay.
those too.
right. So the to-go cocktail provision in the is meant for, if you want to place a food order, I want to go to Folino's and get pizza.
Mhm.
I want to order a bottle of wine at the same time, even though it's going to cost me 3 times as much because it's
Yes.
convenience. It's really meant for convenience for consumers. But as a general course, you're not going to be buying your alcohol from your bars and restaurants with that markup, right? You're just
Right.
going to go to the liquor store, the wine store. It's meant as a
Walmart.
convenience. Don't.
No,
Don't
don't
go
go
to
there.
Walmart.
Don't go there.
Get
We
your
have too
cocktail.
many
They don't
fabulous
serve
wine
it.
shops.
And yeah, so you can't just order
Okay.
a beverage to go. You have to have food with it.
Okay.
So that's,
That's interesting. So do we know how many bars and restaurants did it or?
that's what I'm saying, that the study
We don't
shows.
know.
No, and I have it in the study that you'll circulate. It's not that many. It's a
Yeah.
small amount,
Who
but
The
respond?
people who responded,
correct, but it's also a small amount that engaged in this.
16 establishments did the to-go alcoholic beverages survey, and 32 establishments completed the curbside pickup.
Right.
So
Thank
more
you.
actually did it. It's just fewer
More-
answered the survey. I'm not
16
understanding.
They answered.
Six,
They provided information.
Yeah.
In the survey. It's not whether.
I'm sorry, I'm not asking. Okay. So do we know how many restaurants or bars?
we don't have that totality of numbers.
Okay, so
right?
they didn't have to tell you that they were doing it.
Nope.
Okay,
When we surveyed them and we got some information.
okay,
The number of licensees that participated in the survey is very modest. It's small number.
right.
Yep.
Okay,
Randy was
so-
just saying.
If you're finding that of the 32 that responded, for example, I don't know what the number is. Randy just had. the
Yes,
number.
32 on curbside pickup and 16 on to-go alcoholic beverages.
That participated in the survey or that are
that
doing it?
participated in the survey.
Correct. So we had
Doesn't say how many
16
people.
bars and restaurants. It's in there somewhere.
Right, just, so what's the difference between to go and curbside pickup?
To go is for the bars and restaurants. You go to a bar and restaurant, you
Right.
place a
Like a
takeout
pizza
order,
place is
and
where
you
we
get a
have
to-go
it.
cocktail,
Yes.
to-go beverage. The curbside pickup is the retail stores. It's your convenience stores, it's your restaurant.
Oh, okay, because we
Curbside
did
pickup.
curbside pickup of
Correct.
the food, because we did it during COVID and
Right.
you couldn't go inside. So,
Correct. So this
okay,
is
so curbside
allowing
pickup
the
is the stores.
store, the bars, the wine store, the beer store, the convenience store
Okay.
to allow somebody to do the curbside pickup.
Right, on curbside
Instead of
pickup,
going in the store.
Correct.
But the product itself is the same
It's
as if you were in the store.
Correct.
I mean, it's still in a box.
correct. It's just
Oh, yeah,
a
that seems like
convenience
an
store.
easy thing
Correct.
to allow.
Yeah, some people
Okay.
still don't want to go into
Three hundred
places.
and thirty-eight
Right.
second-class licensed retail stores and fourth-class manufacturing. So there are 338 that were surveyed. And of those, only 32 answered that survey. So
Okay,
about
Yeah.
10%.
Right.
That's not terrible.
That's,
10% is not.
and what did you say,
terrible for a survey
Randy,
of
338
338
were surveyed?
were surveyed, 32 answered. It doesn't say
That's
how
the-
many of the licensees of the to-go. There's not a number here that I see.
It's
That
1,400 first and third class licensees.
But those aren't all the ones that were surveyed. We were only able to
Yeah, you
survey.
did a subset.
Randy gave you the, I'm sorry, Senator Brock gave you the numbers on the curbside pickup, which is the second and fourth class. And I will, sorry, I didn't know we were gonna go in such detail.
No,
I would have
no.
had the report.
no,
ready.
we can
Yeah.
talk about it later. I just
We can talk about it. again.
didn't know the
So
term.
I just wanted,
Yeah, you have time to finish up, and
Okay.
I would love for you to, Meg, come on in. So we're kind of, it's crossover, so just committee, we have Meg Smith on the calendar from the Vermont Women's Fund to talk about women's entrepreneurship and access to capital and what they've been working on. We're letting Damien go for today because we should probably wrap up around 11 and start heading to finance, it sounds like.
Yeah,
Um,
especially, yeah, the more time we can get in
Yes.
finance with this bill, we'll get
Okay.
to go home earlier.
Yes.
But
So we'll, Meg, thanks for your patience and flexibility. We'll wrap up with our commissioners and come to you. And as you wrap up, I'd love for you to talk about liquor liability insurance as well, since we're not gonna get the bill, but it is going to judiciary, and we should know about it.
Is that the bill you raised the issue
Yes.
on earlier?
Yes, and I hope it would move a lot
Yes.
faster. but
That
we
hasn't
are-
hey,
moved
it
at
moves
all.
along
That's as fast as we go.
pretty fast,
Yeah.
from what I see.
It didn't move as fast as Johann von Trapp's like contiguous premise serving
Right.
beer thing that happened when I was new, but
So liquor liability, basically, there's some really good changes that were made that was designed to help the bars and restaurants that are finding, there was a small subset of them, finding it challenging to obtain liquor liability insurance at all. So there's a mandate there. So as part of a license, the condition of granting a license, we will ensure that there's liquor liability insurance. According to the experts, they said that that's going to help the situation. Our role in it is just to basically ensure that there is liquor liability insurance established. They took out some landlord liability. They have some changes that originally it was the language in Title VII for what they call dram shop. It's the liability for over serving, with strict liability, they call it. That's the problem that Vermont was facing, and that was
so why
identified.
isn't this coming to finance?
Because it
Maybe it
knows how
will.
busy you are.
So.
No, I mean, it's liability. This is the second
Yeah.
time Sears has tried to sneak that by me. Okay.
So anyway, you'll probably see that.
yeah, I had hoped.
Strict liability is.
That's you're right, it's you're the insurance crowd.
It, in the House side, it's Commerce that intentionally kicked it over to judiciary to move it more quickly. And on this side, it, I think automatically went to judiciary. Is it there now? They have possession. And we have a different jurisdictional
Yeah.
framework, so it could come to us and our
No,
committee's good at moving
but
things quickly,
finance
so
has
I-
changes in insurance.
Yeah, exactly.
And he tried to do strict liability for the PFA
This is actually moving it from strict liability, which is current form, to what they call a negligence standard.
Okay, yeah.
Anyway,
Should
That's
we,
better.
I think you could ask Senator Sears to have jurisdiction move to finance.
I think that we should know if
Yeah,
the impact it's gonna have in the industry.
whoever's gonna move it.
This time, I'm sure it's better
Yeah,
than putting strict liability.
right.
We were told that time that the only strict liability in the country was scaffolding in New York.
well, Vermont
So
liquor
Vermont
liability
has
is
liquor
what?
liability is
Increase the
strict.
cost.
All right.
So it probably, I'll try to connect with Senator Sears, just so. It'll probably come to us for at least a
Could be,
day.
I know,
So we
right?
might wanna
Felt
know.
that.
We might wanna preview it, so.
So the other things I want to just touch really briefly on, we talked about direct-to-consumer shipping. You mentioned we have the department sought funding from our National Organization of Alcohol State Beverage Control Organizations, totally bastardizing that, but we have a direct-to-consumer shipping compliance pilot. We will have data for you probably this summer. There were a number of considerations that the department raised. The problem with direct-to-consumer shipping for alcohol. One, the way we've set up now is alcohol, distilled spirits is purchased through an 802 spirit store. We contract with private entities and we give them a commission. So if you're bypassing them, you're bypassing the agents. That's a problem. The other is enforcement. There is no enforcement mechanism right now like we have with bricks and mortar. We have our investigators that can go into a bricks and mortar store. So we need to figure out what the apparatus is and what's the construct for. Now all of a sudden you have shipping that goes to somebody's house. How are you ensuring that minors aren't accessing them? And then the other.
So that means we don't have great enforcement on beer and wine right now, shipping.
We don't know.
I'd have to get you information. on that.
Okay.
Right.
So some considerations we raised. I see this as something that could be discussed next year. I don't see this. We don't have the information yet. And I've yet to have someone articulate how they're going to address those considerations. We raised, the department raised these considerations last year in House General. They talked about it considerably. So
Yeah.
those are just pointing them out. There's some considerations that have not been addressed. The other thing is on S107. I've heard repeatedly for the last several years from wineries and cider makers that have their manufacturing locations in the rural communities, much of Vermont is. And so this is looking for them to give them the ability to have a first-class license. Our position really is that there is a mechanism, and that's the fourth-class license. So manufacturers can get a fourth-class license. The path forward for this isn't to allow them to have a first-class license not contiguous to their manufacturing. It's to allow them an additional fourth-class location that has up to 5 different manufacturers. Right now, a fourth-class license, there's one location where you can have up to 5 additional Vermont manufacturer products. So you could be, Stella 14 wines, and you can also have a cider, Eden cider there, and you could have, Boyden Valley, whatever. And so there's only one location right now that you're allowed to have those 5 other products. Our suggestion is that we increase that to 2. So you have an additional location where you can have the other, products that you can have full pours of. The problem that Tucker pointed out is if you are allowing manufacturers to then secure first-class license, one, you're setting up unfair competition with the bars and restaurants who have a lot more that they need to do. And then you're also sort of impinging on that 3-tier system. People that manufacture the products, people that distribute it, and then the retail, which is the stores or the bars and the restaurants.
So that's the Tide Law challenge.
It's the 3 tiers,
Just for Wendy, that's the English system which we did not duplicate here, where you manufacture, distribute and sell all the same. You control all 3 aspects of the.
Right. The 3-tier system is meant to have those individuals so that you can't have someone that's manufacturing, distributing them, and then serving in the retail
Right, like the
network.
Green King in Suffolk or.
This is the way the US alcohol system is
Just
built.
It's a three-tier.
The three-tiered
Keep it
system,
clean.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, you're not allowed to sell it, distribute it, right? Because then you can have a monopoly. You
And
can
then it's,
decide, you know what?
Anti-monopoly,
Right.
time law.
Wendy, Night Wine is only going to distribute night wine, and then in every bar and restaurant is only night wine. So we avoid that.
And we had trouble, I remember my last go through, that we started making changes for the local distilleries and breweries because some of the big national brands were saying to their distributors, look, if you're gonna start bringing all these little guys in, we're gonna cut back on what we do. And so they were having trouble accessing the distribution system. And they only had 10 bottles of wine and nobody wanted to distribute 10 bottles of wine.
Well, there is a provision that allows the smaller wineries and breweries to self-distribute. So
Right.
we're getting in the weeds a
We'll get
little
into
bit,
that
but
on
But
July.
that's.
the other thing to keep in mind is you are not allowed to, according to my general counsel, and Tucker will tell you the same thing, you're not allowed to make changes. You can't do anti-competitive changes. You can't just allow certain things for Vermont manufacturers
Right.
and not allow them for other.
Right.
Because remember, the department, our suppliers are international. Our spirits suppliers operate all over the world.
And we knew when we opened up the ability
That's the
to ship
field
and
trip.
deliver that we would.
Yeah.
What do you need?
No, that's the field trip. We need to go internationally to check
need
out
to-
all your partners. What are we doing limiting ourselves to field trips?
Not just
No one ever
Kentucky?
brings samples.
Okay,
All
so
right.
we'll have you back in.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank
you,
Nice to see you all.
We could go to Napa.
Hi, Meg.
Oh, we could. That sounds very good.
Okay.
Yeah, please take the
Yes.
witness chair. Do you have
Okay.
something,
I have some.
PowerPoint or it's?
Yeah,
Okay.
I went hard copy.
That's great. We love that.
If you want to
Doesn't
just
break.
take one and pass it along.
Find it.
My
Oh,
name's
Meg,
Meg.
it is good to have you in this. community.
Thank you.
I can't
I'm
remember the last
excited
time
to
you
be
were-
here. I've never been before this.
Yeah, I
committee.
didn't.
Oh my gosh, well,
Do you
it's
have one
important
for
that
our
you.
assistant?
I do.
Thank
Is
you.
that Scott?
That is
Hi, Scott. Nice to
Design
meet you.
more.
Okay, so quick overview. The Vermont Women's Fund, I'm the director. First of all, hello.
Yes.
I'm Meg Smith. I'm the director of the Vermont Women's Fund. I've
Do you
been,
know everybody here?
I do not.
Okay,
I
I know.
know.
Go
I'm
ahead.
Ann Cummings. I'm
Hi.
from Washington District,
I
right
know
here. Uh-huh. Nice to meet you.
Allison
I know
Clarkson, Windsor
Allison.
County District.
Yeah. Still Chittenden County.
Randy Brock, Franklin, and part of Grand Isle County.
Nice to meet you.
Wendy Harrison, Wyndham County.
Nice to meet you as well. I was just in Brattleboro.
Oh.
That's where I came from.
Nice. That's where I live.
For an event that we had about This Way Up. So quick background. In 2016, the Vermont Women's Fund was part of the 3 partnership, Change the Story, where we created a series of research reports, data reports on women's economic status in Vermont, which had not been done really ever to the extent that we did it, but it hadn't been done for at least 12 years. At that time, one of the reports was on women's business ownership and its impact on Vermont's economy. And that's when we discovered that no one tracks the ownership by gender in the state of Vermont. Secretary of State's office does not know whether a business is owned by a man or a woman.
We've
And-
talked about working on that
Yeah.
with them, demographic information of their
Yeah.
filers.
We have.
And
but
they
we haven't
want to
made
change
any
their
progress.
portal.
Yeah.
And when I talked to them in 2020 about this, and I said, if you're changing your portal, I'm not going to try and do this project. And they said, we're changing our portal, but you should go ahead and do your project because it might take longer than we hope. So here we are, 2023.
Yeah.
The portal has not changed. I'm very glad I went ahead with this project.
So
So
that, you know what, that's a good, but we created the portal in this committee. We should follow
Yeah.
and get an update on the portal because I'm sorry, that should have happened at least
Right.
2 years
It's
ago.
Lauren.
Well, we could ask Lauren
Lauren
Hibbert,
Hibbert.
and she's deputy secretary. That would be
Yes.
good because Chris Winters had been the spearhead.
right, I had
Sorry.
talked to Chris back then. So this sort of gaping hole of ownership and not knowing the
gender, why is it important? Because we know historically that women have had a much harder time accessing capital. That's not only national, that's in Vermont. We also know that women-owned businesses grow much more slowly. The report that was done in 2016 used census data. They scraped census data to get the results that they did. Some of which seemed to be spot on. Others we're now discovering with the real hard data that there were holes. But the census data indicated there are roughly 23,000 businesses owned by women out of the 81,000 roughly that are registered with the Secretary of State's office. So we have this, what was an invisible sector within our economy that has never been identified, counted, or even questioned. So the Women's Fund, thanks to a private foundation, gave us the first year of funding to launch what is a digital platform called This Way Up. There's power in our numbers. This report is the first, I'd love to say it's a year-long report. It's actually 13 months, but we have taken our survey signers and synthesized the data. All of this, much of the results are available online. The data is aggregated in real time. It's a very dynamic, interactive website, but this report has information you don't see on the website because we couldn't report out everything. So if you go to page 4, we are working with 2,850 women-owned businesses. We now know they earn $2.25 billion. Our census data showed that the 23,000 earned $2.2 billion. So
23,000 businesses.
Yeah, so this is real numbers. This is obviously a much bigger and more dynamic sector than we could determine 5 years ago. We see job creation, and then all those little dots on the map, those are the actual businesses. And when you go on the website, you can click on a dot and it gives you the name of the business and their website.
Fabulous.
So you can now filter. I needed a photographer for an event in Montpelier. I used the map and found a photographer. I was very excited about that.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to just point out a few highlights and then we can go from there. Page 5, you look at the first graph. Our demographics are showing that 35 to 44 years old women are the highest segment. And then if you go to the top of page 6, look at when the number of businesses that started in the 2020.
In the pandemic.
The pandemic, when women had to leave the workforce, they were not idle. They went home and they developed a new income stream. So this number is significant in that we have a burgeoning group of entrepreneurs who are starting businesses, helping grow our economy, and they often need a lot of help. And help meaning technical assistance, mentorship, connection. You know, that what I'll tell you, one thing I've really come to realize with this initiative is our rural economy creates a different kind of business and business owner than in an urban area. So if you have a business in Hardwick, you aren't going to go to the Boston sales conference and make those connections. You don't have the connections oftentimes.
I'm one of them. I don't know if
Okay.
I'm on the count, but
hope
I
so.
have had a business since 80s.
Mhm.
But that was always, I did knitwear, custom design.
I see you're knitting.
Yes, but I had machines and computers. But getting the funding to go to the big trade shows in Boston or New York, coming up with a couple $1,000, you couldn't do it. And the state marketed food, but it wasn't marketing other things.
So if you look on page 7, you can see, now, let me just
Because that's
preface,
the next question is what are these businesses and what's?
and here's what they are.
Yeah.
Now, and I want to say, I am working very hard in Southern Vermont, Upper Valley, and Northeast Kingdom now, specifically because these numbers only represent our 2,800 survey signers. And I want to make sure that we're getting representation around the state.
So this isn't really representative of the 23,000 necessarily.
Correct. This is representative of the 2,850. So we have a lot more to go. Am I gonna get 23,000 signers? Probably not. But to have
Wouldn't put it past.
a statistical sample that already is this large is
Great.
significant. And I think, I know now where already like, oh, there are a lot of women law firms. There are a lot of areas that we're not strong in yet, but this gives a really good, I mean, you can look at artisan goods, which would be your business, Anne, is the second largest
Yep.
category.
So the
it
one
is
challenge
broad.
here is it would be great with each of the things like wellness, because the colors are so similar
know.
and the colors are used again, it would be great to have the percent next to the name too.
Good idea. Yeah,
'cause
and I'm gonna change the colors a little bit.
Well, it's okay, there maybe aren't.
So
It's beautiful.
as we continue looking through, you see that on page 8, 77% are 100% owners of the business. I mean, and we also have an idea of not only who relies on them for financial support, but also what are some of their lived experiences. Page 10, I'm sorry to say 22% of our survey signers have experienced mistreatment or abuse. We ask questions that are the hard data and then also lived experiences. How do they identify? What life changes led them to starting their business? And that, again, page 12 says, I lost employment and decided it was time to work for myself. That doesn't necessarily happen in an urban area. That happens in a rural economy because they're just, the base isn't there to find jobs. So we have very enterprising women who have started these businesses. And then the most important part is what do they need to grow? So, and we have barriers. I'll let you all look through. I know there's limited time here, so I'm not going to walk you through it page by page. But if you go to page 18, you'll see where they're actually accessing technical advice. Small Business Association tops the list. By the way, most women use credit cards to finance their business.
Yeah, I was looking at that page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a very sustainable
That is
way.
not a good thing.
Right.
Mhm.
And then, as you can see, on page 18 through 22 is just showing you all the different providers and
So-
where people are looking for them.
But just before we leave
Yeah.
page 18, it's interesting to know that many of our CAP agencies, our community action agencies, provide micro grants. I know a ton of businesses. I love the micro grant program.
Yeah.
Because so many of the businesses we know and love actually were started in them. And we have a very robust, we have some very robust business, and it's not mentioned really here, which is interesting to me. So I think that's where,
Well, page 20,
does 20 have?
if you look at the capstone,
Yeah,
and then right in the middle, capstone is mentioned,
Yeah.
84%, and then micro
Yeah.
business development
because
programs.
those,
So they're
those are great.
working, but
not for initial startup money. I thought that's what they were used for.
that's what they're used for, but so far, that's why this survey is gonna stay open till the end of the summer. Because I realized I was gonna close it sooner, and I
Yeah.
realized there's still, we need a lot to cover a lot more ground.
One thing that's striking is that the organizations that they access are very, very small numbers
Mhm.
compared to the total, very small.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's
stands
only the
out.
people who responded to the survey.
Right.
So,
but
There's a lot of people, like 28.
2,800 is a
Yeah.
pretty good sample. However, regionally, we hadn't made the inroads that I wanted to, which is why I'm keeping the survey open. And, without going too deep into the weeds, you'd think, and maybe you can, with your experience, I have found more and more women basically saying, it's too many hoops to jump through.
Mhm.
I'm running a business. I have a family. I'm trying to do something else and I don't have time for the SBA grant process or whatever.
Even though
and-
they've, of course, worked to make a lot of it very simple, the SBA guys. 'cause
Absolutely, no,
in
and it's
COVID,
not
you've been working with
denigrating
I
the
talked to
services.
SBA. I'm fine.
You found them or did not find them? Apparently, you're not alone. And I, yesterday in Brattleboro, we had this event with women business owners and entrepreneurs, and the SBA was there. Every acronym on the book was there. Center for Women in Enterprise, the Brattleboro developed BBCC. We had workshops in the morning, networking in the afternoon, a reception in the evening. The workshops were very well attended, 45 women
Great.
for several hours. So there's this huge untapped potential, and women want to connect and grow their businesses, and some do not. Some want to remain solopreneurs, and more power to them. But we have an opportunity to, if half of our solopreneurs hired one employee, it would create 5,000 jobs. I mean, that's what we learned from Change the Story. There's just a lot of potential. And one of the things, and I'll go back to my seat at the table, which is as this philanthropic resource. And in this case, it's taken philanthropy to get this data. And I'm really proud of that. And that's what a women's fund is supposed to be doing. Making change, filling gaps, creating data that doesn't exist. And that, I think, is our job. One of the things I'm thinking about doing is creating a fund that would help those beginning business owners become bankable, learn to get that next step, so they get some small funding that gets them to the next level, and then they can go to the bank.
So a micro business grant, basically.
Yes.
Doesn't,
Or
isn't
forgivable
income,
loan.
that isn't necessarily related to your income level or your
Right.
socioeconomic
Right.
status.
But the other step is if you want to hire, that is a huge step because then you have payroll
Yeah.
and you have a whole
Yeah.
bunch of other responsibilities. And if you don't have an accounting background, that can
Yeah.
be just, it's enough to stop.
It's a huge barrier.
It is a huge barrier.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. Or we can be introducing people to bookkeepers who can help make that simpler for
But you could do, I mean, you could do something like you do for the joint offices where you have a central receptionist. You could have a central
administration.
administration help, that would do your payroll and your books and.
Well, one of the things we're talking about is now that the virtual world is much more accessible
Yes.
to everyone, that we could create a platform that becomes a mentorship and connection platform. And if you're looking for help with your books, you seek it there. I still believe that given our regional makeup, that we still need in-person contacts to get women
Yes.
connected, and then they will seek those services. But it is a vibrant and exciting community. And I see it everywhere I go. I'm sure you do too. And so I'm really committed to helping women grow their businesses as much as they want to, and perhaps seek opportunities they wouldn't have, because ultimately it's going to be a huge economic gain for the state.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
And
So,
it clearly already is.
yeah, and we know from our previous data that the revenues of women-owned businesses currently lag significantly behind male-owned businesses. Our census data showed that women were making 19 cents to the dollar of a male-owned business. I'm hoping that 6 years later, that number has changed. But regardless, women tend to undercharge, undervalue, don't seek outside help, and don't take on employees. So
But also get less capital.
get less capital, have a much harder time
Yeah.
even accessing bank loans.
Right.
I mean, the stories I keep hearing just are amazing. And this is not, there's a business owner from 30 years ago who said she got turned down by 5 different banks. And she's 30 years later, very successful business in Shelburne, Vermont. And she went to help her daughter get a mortgage and she got turned down again. And she's like, I don't even,
Yeah.
like,
You're
there's,
kidding.
there's nothing on the books that would
Right.
make that happen. So that's that sample. Then I just last night heard from a woman in Brattleboro who she and her brother both inherited a small amount of money. Her brother went to a bank and got $250,000 offered to him for his business. She went to a different bank. She wants $10,000 to publish a book. She can't, so far she can't get the money.
Yeah.
And they have collateral, they have, you know, everything is the
Right.
same.
Wow.
Except the
yeah.
bank.
The bank and the gender.
Well, I mean, I do at some point, either this session or next session, I want to haul our capital providers and banks in and ask them why they're doing such a poor job on this front. Because the data you're showing of how much percent actually access, I mean, it's so much less in terms of our CDFIs are lending to maybe less than 7%.
Yeah.
And people of color, and that's their mission.
And
That's
I'm
what they're
talking
supposed to do.
everyone, I mean, I am
Yeah.
talking to all of them. In fact, I'm presenting to the Vermont Bankers Association
Yeah.
next, April 5th. There's a lot of interest and I think there's a lot of fear, you know, how do you get outside of that lending box that
Yeah.
you've always had? I realize the banks, that's a much slower, you know, how are you gonna change that system?
Right.
That's gonna happen very slowly. The CDFIs, did I get that right?
And what
They are much more proactive. I was just talking to Community Capital
Yeah.
Vermont last night. But I keep coming back to the fact that it seems like funding philanthropy may be the fastest way to jumpstart.
Often is.
And, you know, and get them to the next level. As one woman said to me, well, she has a very nice big farm stands maybe not the right word, but she said, all I need is a walk-in cooler.
Yeah.
You know, like they're these very tangible things and she doesn't have enough collateral
Right.
to get the loan.
The-
And so she's like in that
Yeah.
lower space.
The first loan my parents got to open their restaurant was from the Women's Bank of Los Angeles. And I think we might need to return to really specific.
There is a
Capital
whole
access.
women's bank, but
There is in Vermont.
no, in California, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I would like to
Yeah.
see that actually.
So what's interesting to me is that we think of men who are the ones who don't ask for help. They don't ask for directions, sorry, they don't. They tend to not ask for directions and they tend to not ask for help. I think of women actually networking very effectively. So what's concerning to me about looking at this is that there's not as much indication, there's some indication that they're reaching out and asking for help. But I mean, I think of women being really good at that.
But I think we know in our world, women don't ask for money.
Yeah, it's a
Especially
fine-
money,
no
for-
one
not- they don't ask for money for themselves.
For
Yeah,
themselves.
they'll ask for money for other
Right,
people.
right,
typically.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah, and well,
which is why
and
women
this
are
is
in
all,
philanthropy.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously
and
everyone's
I
different.
mean, I was doing this.
Right, exactly.
Not
Yeah,
Panther.
Randy's like,
I'm not saying
it.
anything.
Yeah.
I know, and
Wise man.
what I say, as director of the Vermont Women's Fund, we very much welcome men. We need men at the table to make effective change. Our system has always been skewed. I mean, it's a patriarchy. So we are trying to shift that. And what this comes down to, this work, which will continue, is an economic development tool.
Mhm.
And so gender, I don't want to get into gender wars. That's not my purpose. My purpose is to find ways to jumpstart these new young business owners. We now know how many of them started in that 2019. I mean, really,
right.
2018 is when
Huge.
there was an uptick
Yeah.
and then the pandemic. So let's take this whole new group of business owners and make it accessible for them to succeed.
Yeah.
And we will all benefit.
That's wonderful, and thank you. Just two questions.
Yeah.
Credit unions often support folks who haven't
Yeah.
had a lot of
They
support
rank
from
high.
They
traditional.
get-
They're
Okay,
the second source.
and then what about childcare? Did you see that as a barrier? Did they mention that? I saw
Hmm.
work-life balance.
I do
Or
not
what family.
think we actually asked the question specifically about childcare.
That's why I was there.
There's
Because that
like
might
so
be
many
a-
questions. I
Yeah.
wish I could go back and redo this
Right,
survey. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. So no, we did not.
It'd be
ask that.
interesting to know how much of a barrier
Yeah.
that is, or if that's a reason that they want to work from home. I'm assuming
Yes.
many of these are. from home.
Flexibility
That's
is what,
why I was
it-
there.
what ranks high is,
Yeah.
and I think flexibility is also.
The other one is continuity of failure. I was a long time ago, in the 80s. But an awful lot of women were doing the crafts markets, and there were some real artists. And I've seen, yeah, there was a huge teddy bear artist. Several, nationally known producers in Vermont. There were shows all over the country, died. I mean, I've seen several things go through cycles. They tended to be things that were crafty. But the public,
That market's changed.
markets change.
Mhm.
And when all you know how to do is decoupage furniture, and that was really big.
Yeah,
But yeah, you can't give decoupage away
Right.
10 years later. And I think that may be part of it, is that, and maybe after that, your kids were raised and you could go to a real job. But there is in that whole arts and crafts, there's a whole cyclical thing.
Mhm.
If you're doing computer consulting, it
different
changes,
industry.
but it's more gradual. This is just,
Well, look at wellness. Wellness is,
Yeah.
yes, that's
it ranks
big.
very high
I
now.
just found my former babysitter, it's got some kind of an aromatherapy wellness.
Yeah.
program
Well,
in
look at-
Maine.
So that's,
Look at all the yoga studios owned by women.
yeah,
But I wish there was many law firms.
yeah.
But, Wendy, to go to your question about childcare, on the age of women who are starting these businesses, it is amazing that it is a huge number, the largest number of women are 35
I
to
know.
44. So
Yeah.
either they're solving their childcare problem and can afford
By
to do
being
that,
at home.
or they're and so one of the follow-up questions would be for that group is,
Right.
where is your business based?
Yes.
And how are you managing the childcare scene?
Believe me, if I have an opportunity after we close the
Yeah.
survey to go back and do a
It's-
follow-up,
Right.
I'm going to.
Remind me when you're closing the survey.
August 31st, the
Okay,
end of
okay.
the summer.
So
May I just
Yeah.
follow up on that, which
Yeah.
is, would you be kind enough to send legislators? Because all of us,
Yeah.
women-owned businesses.
Sure.
That I would love, if you would be kind enough to send us all a link to the
I
survey.
would love to do that.
And just a
Yeah.
brief thing for those of us
Cool.
that you're not talking to.
Right.
Just, I'd love your help
Sure.
in getting more people to
Yeah.
Yeah.
participate. Would you be kind enough to reach out to your women-owned businesses that you may know about? Because I think we could be partners on this.
Yeah,
And the other thing, I think, once you finish this survey for next year, and maybe even for this year, but, because I think we need to do some help on the portal. But I think we should work together figuring out what are the asks that we can help with legislatively.
mhm,
And what are the enabling things we can do to help stimulate
yeah,
this
yeah.
after you finish this work?
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, number one, I'm trying to get the committee excited about fall field trips, because it's probably not gonna work during session. We're just, things keep coming up, but.
Yeah.
And then I can't do anything this summer. I'm sure we'd all break, but,
You're
you know,
gonna be busy.
this fall, it would be nice to do regional field trips, and perhaps one visit could be a roundtable with some of the businesses
Oh,
that
that's
you
a
talked
great
to.
idea.
Yeah.
6, positive and not so positive experiences. How did they get capital? When were they denied capital?
Yeah.
Having, lenders in the room to hear these stories. I think we'd like to continue to help you at least shine a light this year on
Fantastic.
the work. And then start to build those asks for next year, start to figure out what policy changes we want.
That's great. I mean, I certainly don't want to do this work alone.
Right.
And I've learned a lot about banking as a result, it's a learning curve for me as well.
Yeah.
Well, and Carrie must be being, and the commission must be being helpful. I mean,
Oh,
I think
yes.
They would,
But again, I really just had my head down trying to
Yeah.
get surveys, you know, get people to sign. And,
Yeah.
and the fact that this is all self-reported data, just, I should have said that from the start, because that is one thing that the data is going to change over time. People fold their businesses or, you know, grow them, and we don't know where that's happened. But I'd love to do a field trip. I mean, the Brattleboro thing yesterday was sort of a perfect example.
Nice, yeah.
But yes to all.
Very bad timing for us.
Fall.
No, to try and do something like Brattleboro and
Oh,
crossover.
Exactly. We had to cancel a field trip for next Tuesday to visit businesses just because you
I
can't have
understand.
5, especially these 5 senators with the majority live in Martin Finance chair. So
Yeah.
we're having a hard time leaving during the session, but
You can't.
fall is a nice time for
Well,
us to travel.
Happy to help out and what are, you know,
Well,
organize.
thank you for following up with the incredible work of Change the Story
Yeah.
with this piece of that. I have used Change the Story so often. It's just been, what a great piece of work.
I'm so glad. And that is, I'd say, one of the most satisfying things in working on this is that we are following, that we're looking at the gaps that Change the Story highlighted and now trying to fill them. So it really is a continuation of the work. And business ownership is just one segment, but that was something that we really tangibly could take on and make happen.
So critical. I mean, a lot of Vermonters want to own their own business, and
Yes.
people, yeah, I mean, leaving the workplace, it was childcare, but it might have also just been, I don't want to have a boss anymore. You know, I want to leave. I mean, a lot of women of color particularly talked about leaving a workplace that was not feeding their soul.
Right.
And finally starting their smoothie shop or their consulting business. And we want to keep those going and not have them be part of the sort of failure statistics if we can help.
Absolutely. No, there's some really astounding new businesses coming up that are, and, you know, it's different industries now.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Right.
website
Yeah.
development or,
Yeah.
you know, there's, and
I'm
one
looking
of,
for some of those.
yeah, okay.
And financial consulting, I mean,
Yeah.
and wonderful niche industries for financial consulting for older women,
Yeah.
particularly who
Which
are
is a huge-
single older women under 70. I mean, those are very sort of niche.
Yeah.
But, you know, there we can marry our consumer protection of older people who are taken such advantage of financially. And here there are whole businesses that have been created to protect those
Yeah.
particular women. So it's,
And it's also a group that we can access to disseminate information. I'm thinking about home sharing, you know, when you talk about
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
this can be a group that we
Yeah,
give information to
yeah,
also.
absolutely. So we'll do a follow-up report when the survey closes, you know, so by the end
Oh,
of the
great.
year,
Yeah.
we'll take everything we've got and rework a few of the questions again,
but
but
if you send it out, I think your legislators could be good partners, particularly the
Yeah.
Women's Caucus.
yeah,
I don't know if you're presenting this to the Women's Caucus,
No.
to Molly Burke
I
and Sarah
should,
Coffey,
yeah,
who are the key people.
I'll get in touch with them because I
It
know
would be great
Sarah.
if you'd come present to us. I haven't been able to get to a meeting in a while, but yes.
Yeah,
that
I'd
would
be
great.
happy to do that. Okay, I know you all have a busy schedule, so.
Well,
Oh,
thank
well,
you.
we really appreciate this. Are you doing other things in the building? Are you?
No,
presenting?
I was in Brattleboro
Oh my
and
gosh.
just, I'm on my way back.
She just drove
Yeah,
up.
so
Yeah.
you're just sort of.
It was perfect time.
Oh,
Any other questions or thoughts? I'm aware of the time. I didn't want to.
well, let's stay in
Linger
touch
too long.
is all, you know.
Okay.
You may have, well, we also had started conversations about home loans. And there's a working group talking to banks about, you know, lending to women and people of color in
Mhm.
terms of our first generation home buyers.
Yeah,
You know, like we know if you get a patent, 99% of the time your parents got a patent. If you find
interesting.
yeah, I mean, you know, the tie to what your family has access to
Mm.
is one of the greatest
Yeah.
barriers.
Well, and enablers,
small.
because people
Enablers.
become,
Yeah.
so often people become the things their parents were
Yes.
or were
Mhm.
involved
Well,
with.
it's what you're familiar with.
It's
Yeah,
what you're
small
familiar
business
with.
ownership.
Right, so
Mhm.
taking this leap,
Or choose consciously not to do like you,
well,
not in the restaurant business.
no, not in the restaurant business, but, you know, got married into a family business, have my own business, you know,
Right.
it's still true that and I'm comfortable asking for money, you know, there's things that you just don't pick up otherwise.
Yeah.
I wonder
So
if
we love
youngest
to-
children are more likely to have, or feel more comfortable asking for money than eldest children. I mean, those are always the
Very
other
interesting.
additional
That's
things.
a psychology.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Like
concept-
asking for help in general.
Well, exactly. I mean, where you fit in the family constellation has huge impact on
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
what you do and don't do.
So all of these questions can be explored and we'd love to get together in the fall
Great.
and help highlight
Great.
this and be part of
Yeah,
it.
and
and
draw
we could
attention.
do a field trip.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
roundtable. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah,
to inform whatever, to figure out where we can be helpful.
Mhm.
right.
And regionally, you let me know where you would want that to happen, because
White River Junction, which
Okay.
doesn't even figure on this.
oh
I
no,
was
well,
gonna
well,
say.
we
It
have,
do- it- Well,
Yeah.
I know, but it didn't figure on any of the major.
and you know what,
thinking
that's a
Yeah, Brattleboro.
question.
I was
Um,
thinking Highgate Springs myself.
Yeah.
I
It's
think
somewhere in the middle of all of these where the businesses
I
are
wish
densest.
we're gonna re-ask that question about where
Yeah,
the
that's the
density,
where.
because it should be per capita,
Mm,
not
yeah.
flat population.
Or
Right.
per county too. I mean, either per
Yeah.
capita or per county.
Yeah,
Well, just distribution.
so that we
Yeah.
get a sense, I mean, there are a ton of women-owned businesses in Brattleboro, for example, and
Yeah.
that
And that doesn't
rank
even
on
figure here.
because-
And there are a ton in the Upper Valley. And
Yeah.
there
Yes.
are a ton, a bunch of places.
Well,
Yeah.
we might take a couple different field trips to different places and we can have this conversation.
Okay. Great.
So,
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it, and it's exciting to be able to present this to you.
yeah,
Well,
This
Great
is the
work.
first,
yeah.
so
But getting this
exciting.
many responses already is tremendous, so.
it's been
thank you.
very exciting and challenging at the same time, just to reach folks, but it's kind of happening on its own now,
Right,
which is really great.
And now we all want to know the qualitative piece.
Yes.
What are the stories?
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
thanks, this
Have an
was terrific.
Good. All right, good luck with all your very hard work.
We
that
need
you're
it.
doing.
So we are done.
So